Hey guys, welcome back into another, wow. We have another week of ghosts, so let's get into it. The big news, Back to the Future closing in December. Are any of us surprised? I certainly am not. If you've been following the channel, you know this was coming from a mile away. That's pretty much all I gotta say. And Juliet, 95% last week, 92% this week. 1,020,343 last week, 879K this week. Obviously, it's not amazing. 879 is better than what they've been doing and 92% capacity, but it is very clear that Anne Juliet is going to be relying on stunt casting, hence Charlie D'Amelio, hence Backstreet Boy number, whoever cares. And yeah, so I think the show's got a year left in it. I'll say that. I'll put it on the dot, 1 year. Maybe even more. I don't know. I just know that when stunt casting happens, show's not in a great place. The Louis Armstrong musical, 83% last week, 637K this week, 8 performances, 74% capacity, and 592K. Not a good second week for the Louis Armstrong musical. It started off very promising, but 592 is not where you want to see it going. New musicals, very important that they go up and not down, and 637 is a good number, but 592K is just not going to cut it, aka pack it up because it's going to flop. No, I can't say that it's going to flop. I'm just going to think it's going to flop. It just seems like, hold on. Something in my eye. It just seems like one of those shows that flops. You just look at a show and you're like, you're a flop in the making, and I haven't even seen it yet. And I'm just gonna say that. Back to the Future is closing. 85% last week, 76% this week. 896K to 749K this week. Obviously, it's very clear why this is closing. Cabaret, 93% last week, and 1,123,538 to this week's 86% and 1,006,314. Death Becomes Her with a very solid start of 97% capacity for 3 performances and 571K, which is a pretty decent start. It is a very expensive show. I'd say probably costs 800K maybe to put on each week. They were supposed to have 4 performances, but one of them got canceled because Megan Hilty was sick. So 571K is still pretty high. So with that 4th performance, it might have gone into a 6, which is where you want to see most new musicals start. And looking at advanced sales, they seem to be selling quite well. So I don't know if Death Becomes Her is going to be a 3 to 5 year long hit, but I don't think it's going to be a flop. Promising start. Hadestown, 96% last week and 781K to this week's 91% and 681K for an almost 100K drop. Hadestown, again, it's relying on stunt casting. It's doing okay, numbers. It's not in any danger of closing necessarily, but if it continues going down to 6s and 5s and 4s, it's in big trouble. If it can maintain occasional 6s and mostly higher 700s, it's fine. But again, I would say Hadestown has been in trouble since summer of 23, because since then, they've relied purely on stunt casting. Hamilton, 95% last week, 98% this week, 1,868,462 last week to this week's 1,761,086. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child continues to flop. 90% last week, 83% this week, 1,071,884 last week, and 939K this week. Hell's Kitchen, 99% and 1,554,713 to 97% this week, and 1,522,834. Still a behemoth of a hit. Maybe Happy Ending went from 80% last week to 79% this week for 6 performances and 241K to 241K. So not a big change. Average ticket went down to $51. I've discussed this ad nauseum about Maybe Happy Ending. And I saw it recently, so the review is coming. But purely business-wise, the show's not doing good. These lower ticket prices, higher capacities isn't working, and clearly it's not getting a higher capacity. Clearly Darren Criss is not big enough of a name. He is a name, but he is not big enough of a name. If you look at advanced sales, it's not selling well. I predict this show will close either by January or February, allowing for potentially Dead Outlaw to take the theater in the springtime. I just think it is... I explained in my review, which you should go check out, dropping tomorrow, about the financial side of Maybe Happy Ending. But to summarize it, to keep it brief, to keep it simple, it is more commercial, and you can actually say the name, unlike Akimbo or Strange Loop. It appeals to a lot of people. You would think this show is super relatable. It's very Inside Out-esque. This show should be a mainstream box office hit. But it is a slice of life story. It is very simplistic. It's very what you'd call cute. Not in a demeaning way, but that's what people would describe it as. And it's not something that people are going to say, you have to go and see this. I'm saying you have to go and see this. But not a lot of people are going to say that. And for an original musical, it has to be, this is the next big thing. In order for you to see that, in order for audiences to see that, that's more of a commentary on the sad state of Broadway economics and how original musicals just cannot survive in this field, despite musicals being super good. You know, there's some shows that don't do well, like Lempicka, an original musical, but not a lot of people liked it. But then you have shows like Kimberly Kimbo and Maybe Happy Ending, which audiences are liking, critics like, but they don't do so well, and that's because there's no stunt casting, there's no IP, it's not a limited engagement, and those are the three things you need if you want your show to succeed on Broadway in 2024. I'm sorry, but it's facts. And if you're an original musical, you gotta win Best Musical, otherwise you're toast. And even when you win Best Musical, you still close Kimbo and Strange Loop, especially a Strange Loop as a big example. COVID has messed up this whole Best Musical audience 100%. People are not willing to take risks, and also the marketing for Broadway shows are not great, especially original musicals that either rely on quotes or a vague description of the show, which is what Maybe Happy Ending is doing, and I think that dooms the productions a lot. And Maybe Happy Ending is very esoteric, it's very, ethereal. Akimbo is very quirky, and you needed a very strong, effective marketing campaign. Another thing I realized is why don't these shows do so well is because there's not it doesn't, movies, you have trailers, and they're playing in front of movies all across the world. With musicals, you don't have that. And so I wish there was some kind of way you could have a preview of musicals where everyone was watching, where lots of people that wouldn't even know, that would love to see the show, that have the money, aren't gonna even know that it exists. But yeah, I think Maybe Happy Ending is on thin ice right now, very thin ice, and I just do not see a bright future for it. I think it's a very commercial show, but at the same time, because it is so simplistic and the plot is not so grabbing you by the legs and jolting you in, because I was thinking, the content of Akimbo and A Strange Loop is very hard for people to get behind. But with Maybe Happy Ending, I was like, the concept is so straightforward, it's so mainstream, it's about two cis, straight men, two cis, straight people fall in love, but they're robots. It's WALL-E, basically. And it's PG-13, it's a very mature 8-year-old could see Maybe Happy Ending, you know what I mean? Older people would love it, conservatives, Republicans, liberals, everyone. So why isn't it doing so well? It's because the concept is too simplistic. It's too simplistic. It's just what it is. It's a slice of life story. The band's visit, when you describe the band's visit, you're not gonna have a lot of people being like, oh, I wanna see that. If you're gonna see a movie like Toy Story 4 and a movie with Leo DiCaprio, Dwayne Johnson, Daniel Day-Lewis, the big stars, versus, the small indie movie about robots. Who's gonna see the movie about indie robots? Not a lot of people. That's why indie movies don't do well and have struggled at the box office. Also, there's streaming, and it's just, that pandemic messed up everything. But anyways, going back to my original point. I think that ultimately the concept of Maybe Happy Ending is too small for enough people to get behind. And that's just what it comes down to. It's the content. And Band's Visit was making $1 million before they even won Best Musical. And that's just the shift of the culture. Dear Evan Hansen, Hamilton, huge mega hits, right? But a lot of these smaller, highbrow musicals, like Band's Visit, Fun Home, would run, Akimbo, kind of had a similar run to Akimbo. Fun Home ran for about a year, and a little over a year. Band's Visit ran for a little over a year and a half. But despite them not having super long runs, which you're not going to expect from these more esoteric, highbrow musicals, because there's just only so much of an audience that's willing to see that, because Broadway is made up of amusements and tourists want to see those shows. And so eventually what happens is, these prestige musicals would normally start off very strong, get big numbers in the post-Tony season, and then slowly decline until they closed. But they made more money throughout their run than Akimbo or maybe Happy Ending. Or in the case of Hadestown, managed to appeal to a younger fan base, and it's been kept running. So I think if bands visit Fun Home, to even extent Hadestown came out this year, as a new show, I think that their business wouldn't be as good. So hopefully that rant made sense, but ultimately I think maybe Happy Ending does not have a chance. And I would say original musicals need to continue to come to Broadway. They're going to continue to come to Broadway, but we're seeing them fail a lot more. And if I'm a producer, if I'm an investor, I don't want to invest in new musicals. And quite honestly, what's the point? You're going to run for 6 months and that's it. Yes, you get licensing, you get the Tony, I get it, but you lose money. And in this business, it's not about awards and reviews or friends, it's about money. Capitalism. Money is all that matters. And that's just a fact. So I would find a new hub like Chicago or Boston or somewhere that it's more affordable, it's less competitive, and you can build up a new theater scene of new musicals, because clearly New York audiences don't want them. And then you'll create a hunger for new musicals, so that way people, when they get them, they're going to be like, wow, this is such a rarity, we got to go see it, even though it's not a limited engagement, even though there's no big stars. And so but new musicals are going to fail for a long time, and I hate it, but a lot of people loved it, and that's still closed. So original musicals are very much an endangered species, and that's just the truth. Moulin Rouge went from 97% and 1,183,233 to 92% and 992K. Again, stunt casting is not an effective way to keep your show running. Clear example. 86% to 75%, and 813K to 650K. Very significant drop, but 6 can easily survive in the 600s range. People are going to say it's going to close, it recouped its investment, it's not a very expensive show to put on. I think 6 is going to be here for a bit more time, but it definitely is starting to show its aging, and it's definitely slowing down. No doubt about that, and again, it is justifiably, you could close it. Actually, no, you couldn't justifiably close it. But, if it continues to do this pattern, you could see a justification coming up. But it's fine. Stereophonic, 100% to 99%, 855K to 846K. Suffs, 95% to 93%, and 880K to 856K, doing a lot better. I think the closing notice helped, and this forthcoming election might also be swaying people to see this show. Sunset Boulevard, wow, went from 98% to 97%, and 1,211,699 to 1,664,663, and an average ticket of only 133. Wow. Even I didn't think it was going to do this well. So clearly this show is a mammoth of a hit. The only question is, will Nicole not being in the show affect it when she leaves? I think so. But for right now, it's a mammoth hit. Probably should close with Nicole in it, but probably won't, and then we'll close losing money. But for right now, major unexpected hit. But a lot of people love the show. Tammy Faye had its second week, 7 performances, 90% to 80%, and 167K to 547K. And the Palace is such a big theater. Tammy Faye is such a big show. These are very disappointing, bad numbers. I predict this will be a flop. Could it stick through to the Tonys? Maybe. But I think $500,000 is not a good start for Tammy Faye. You want a 6, a 7, an 8, and this show clearly is starting off on a very weak note. But who knows? It might improve. Gatsby went from 93% to 88%, and 1,266,300 to 1,118,766, being again one of the unexpected hits of the season. The Notebook went from 90% to 75%, and 715K to 545K, and that is closing. The Outsiders, 100% capacity, and 1,468,609 to 1,435,426. Water for Elephants to finish us off, 72% and 818K, which was a big improvement, to 58% and 500 and 658K, and it's a clear reason why that show is closing. So that's the video. Like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next week. Peace.